today is Marianne Mulber. Marianne is our core presenter for today's session, and she will be going through our webinar topic, which is blended learning, mixing it up. A little bit of housekeeping today before we get started. Wanted to let everybody know that the phone lines are muted today for the webinar in order to keep everything moving and efficient. The session is being recorded and will be available at adaptivesolutions.com website approximately one day after today's session. That would probably be Monday at this point. We're going to run on time, hopefully. We're looking to run about 30 to 45 minutes. If you do have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to use the chat panel on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar session. And I guess the good point is at the end, please hang around for the last couple of slides. We will be awarding one lucky participant a $100 American Express gift card for joining us today and giving us some of your time. So Marianne Mulber is our Director of Learning and Development here at Adaptive Solutions. She's been in the legal industry for over 30 years, has background both in consulting and in in-house law firm management and support of IT infrastructure and applications. What we're going to do today is start the webinar with the first slide, Marianne, please, and we'll move forward. And I wanted to give everyone just a very brief overview of Adaptive as a company. We've been in business now since 1998. It's about 16 years that we're doing legal IT. Primarily, we are a legal-specific systems integration, consulting, and managed service hosting company. We support over 300 law firms and corporate law departments, and much like the law firms that we work with, we have 6 core practice areas that we've outlined here on this slide. The first one is managed service, which we had a webinar on this a couple of weeks ago about our MSP desktop management. The next one is the hosted desktop. The hosted desktop is our cloud offering through Onboard, and in that model we deliver a hosted network to people that do not want to be in the business of IT infrastructure. Obviously, as an integration company, our staple is traditional network support, where we do projects such as desktop and server upgrades, things like Windows 7 and virtual servers and data backup, those types of campaigns. We also have a help desk. It's called Extend IT. It's our 24/7, 365 remote service. If you visit our website, there is a webinar that is posted on the help desk specifically. Today's topic is on learning and development, so I won't steal Marianne's thunder on that one. And then, of course, we wouldn't be legal IT if we weren't involved in the enterprise content management world. We've been a premier partner of HP Autonomy since our inception, and we provide a lot of support specific to legal document management systems and applications. And not on this slide, but I would like to mention that our company is a long-term supporter of ILTA and the Association of Legal Administrators. We're very committed to our communities, both in giving back and learning what's happening in the legal communities. So with that, Marianne, I'm going to ask you to move to the next slide. And just a quick rundown on today's agenda before I hand off to Marianne to take over the core presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about addressing challenges. What are the challenges that your firms face when you educate and share information to your user community? We'll go in a little bit into the changing environments, and we see that just as technology is continuing to change, so is the way that people learn. Gone are the days of setting up conference rooms with laptops and computers and pulling a billable attorney out of his or her office for 2 or 3 days. It just doesn't happen. So we need to change the way we deliver this content to people. And that really comes into the concept of mapping it out and blended learning approaches, using different plans and creating a plan that works for your firm. In the mixing it up, we'll talk a little bit about using different delivery concepts and making it fun for people. When you make learning interesting and you make learning fun, people tend to get more involved and they retain a little bit more of what's being delivered to them. Of course, we'll go into lessons learned. We've been doing this for some 16 years as a company. What's worked in the past might not necessarily work in the future when you're training folks. So the old school classroom mechanisms might still be there for some of your baby boomers or those types of people, but as the younger generations are coming out of law school, we need to find newer, faster, and more creative ways to push this information down and get those folks ramped up. Of course, we'll jump into next steps, where we'll give away some new ideas and even give you some more thoughts to think about. There will be a brief question and answer session at the end, and of course, as I mentioned in the housekeeping, we'll be doing the gift card drawing at the end of the presentation. So with that, Marianne, I'm going to ask you to advance to the next slide, and I'm going to hand off to you for the core presentation, please.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that. I want to first welcome everyone and thank you for this time to join us here today. As Chuck said, we want to talk about a couple of different concepts and give you some more ideas to think about whenever you need to address any type of deployment or just continuing education and keeping up with technology and presenting that information to your end users and your different audiences. So one of the first things we want to discuss is the challenges that everyone faces. And cost is always the biggest challenge that every department and every business unit deals with. It's finding ways that addressing what has been the best cost-effective route for your firm. Thinking about things like, do you have in-house trainers? Do you use consultants? What seems to be the best fit for your environment? When you look at those things, they are related to your budgets and how you can allocate those different things for different types of educating that you want to do. So thinking about maybe if you don't use the hands-on or virtual classes, have you thought of ideas such as investing in a learning management system or using e-learning and even considering alternative methods, using mobile apps and pre-recorded videos for educating your users and presenting your information and getting your message out to the masses there. One of the other things that everyone's challenged with is getting your audience to attend. Having attorneys show up and losing billable hours has been a struggle for years and a challenge that firms have had since pretty much the beginning when you started educating on technology. And I've seen that there's a couple of different ways that people have addressed that. Offering different ways to deliver your content. Things like being part of department or practice group meetings and piggybacking on the monthly meetings that teams might have to educate your attorneys is one way to do it. Some other ideas I've seen is offering a lunch and learn option. If you feed them, they normally will come. So that's another way to get your audience attention and have them get the message out there that you're trying to do. There's still those folks that like to do the one-on-one coaching, which is always something that you can do. But there's also another thing that I've seen people trying, and that's using an open house concept, where you might want to set up in a conference room centrally located in your office where people on their own can come in to find out information or to learn how to work on a task. And sometimes if you have them close to maybe a coffee room or a water cooler, you'll even get more traffic that'll just pop in. I've also used the old thing where you put a bowl of candy out on the desk. They'll always come in to grab that chocolate. And at the same time, you can engage them and ask them questions, and you'll find that they'll ask you questions also. So trying to find different ways to get to your audience is a struggle we all deal with, and if we are a little bit more creative with how we present it to them, a lot of times you'll get more feedback and you'll get more information out of them. And then being creative and flexible with your scheduling. That's another challenge everybody comes up with. And one of the things that I've used in the past is to reach out to your practice groups. Take a look at their calendars and scheduling and see what time of year or what part of the month is the better time to offer it. If it's at the end of the year for the financial team, they're not going to want to touch any kind of training because they're too busy with their year end. So think about asking questions for scheduling, and that's another challenge that you might be able to overcome. And then getting your management buy-in. When you get the support of the higher-up management, it adds so much more value. And a lot of times you'll even see that when management also is bought into the idea, it'll have a bump in your attendance, and you'll see more people will come. So that's a really big thing that you want to take a look at when you can, is to get the managers buy-in for the support. Sorry. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was once you identify what your challenges are, it's identifying the changing environment that we work in. And as we all know, working in technology, it's constantly changing. The world is changing in general, and so is the workplace, and so are your workforce. So you have to find different ways that you can keep up with the changing technology. It's part of everybody's life now. And you need to remember that your audience and your users, they have multiple options at their fingertips. When they need to find information or they want to learn new information, they have multiple ways to get to it. So you want to present your information and their way of presenting your learning concepts to them in the same concept. The days of having an instructor-led classroom, as Chuck had said before, where you set it up in a conference room, is gone. People can get to a classroom today in the virtual world as long as they have a Wi-Fi or a link to internet. They're going to get to it. And the classroom isn't necessarily in a room anymore. It can be on your PCs, on your tablets, and your mobile devices. So that's where they can find the new classroom and the new instructors for finding their information. The days of studying your own, that's still around, but people are more apt now to do self-service. They like the idea of being able to go to a website, find the information. They like to share that way also. People collaborate all the time with information. So that's also changed. And as we know, the textbook has changed. The traditional textbook, the same content is now found in various avenues of media channels. You can go to websites for videos. YouTube is one of the biggest places people go now to learn how to do something. So as the world is changing on technology, us as the educating and technology in law firms also has to keep up with that. Okay. So another thing to think about is mapping it out and having a plan to do all this. So some of the things that we want to think about is, the first thing is you want to be prepared. And the key to being prepared is engaging all types of resources so that you can find out exactly what type of information needs to be presented to your audience. Excuse me. You want to have a clear and detailed message. Not only do you want to teach them a new concept or a new application, but you also want to have an interaction with them so that they understand why they need this. Why do they need this new concept or this new application? How is it going to affect them? So when you're having this message sent to them, you want to define it for them also. It'll also help you with measuring your success. If they understand it, the user adoption is much more successful with that. And the best way to find that out is to know your audience and be able to identify not only just their skill sets, but how this is going to affect them and their workflow process in the day-to-day environment. So when you know your audience and you have a clear definition, it's going to make it much easier to plan out and prepare for any type of learning lesson that you want to present. And the best way to do that is to communicate all of this. You know, take surveys, ask the users what they're looking for or how they use a certain tool. Some you'll find will give you a lot of information you may not even have known about. Others, they're not going to give you that much information. But when you ask everyone, you're going to get a good mix, and that's going to help you plan this out as you move forward. By engaging your audience, it makes them feel like they're part of the process, and they're not going to be shocked when the change happens. And they have a good understanding of what this change is all about. One of the things that I've seen really work is doing pre-rollout or doing a pre-deployment user communication. Have something called what I like to call the WOW session. A WOW session is a great idea where you can introduce new concepts and maybe have a conference room you can go in and just have it set up so that you can introduce to them a little bit of what's coming down the road. Once you let them see it and you wow them with the new concepts and the new ideas, you get more audience. They'll have better buy-in for it, and they'll be excited about it. Another idea is to use some internal blogs, if that's available. Blog about it, talk about it, get excitement going. When people start chatting about it, it's sort of like whisper down the lane. Everybody will understand something's coming. They'll want to know more. And if you can have a marketing plan, if your budget can allow it, that's a great idea to start in with a campaign. Figure out a really cool slogan. Make it fun. Make it engaging for them. Maybe have some games or giveaways for attendance. You'll get a better audience. Another simple thing would be to just hang a poster in the lunchroom, letting them know what's coming down the road. People will notice it. They'll start talking about it, and they get more interested. And then they're going to want to learn more. A little PR can go a long way when you're doing a deployment or doing any kind of upgrade or new application or new process implementation. And then once you have the plan, you want to blend it all together. You want to make sure that when you present and you deliver, that everything is relevant, and you want to make it appealing. One of the things I like to see when we do any type of content development is that we keep the content relevant, but we also want to make it familiar. And having the content be related to their environment, it's the better understanding they'll have of the whole concepts or the new applications. Having scenarios and examples is another way that helps with the learning experience. And making it fun and interesting. It holds the attention of your audience. You want to make sure you ask questions, like I said, to everyone, because they need to be able to relate to everything. And when you offer the content, think about offering it in multiple venues. And you also want to make sure that when you do that, it's easily accessed. So when we all learn, we all have different comfort levels for learning different things. Some people like to learn on their own. So they love to be able to just read it themselves. They retain it. They can go back and reference it multiple times. And they do it at their own pace, and that works great. Other folks like to have that one-on-one interaction where someone is sitting with them and walking through everything. And then you have people that do like to be in that classroom environment. So by blending all of these different types of venues, you can make sure that you attract everyone, and you also can meet the needs of everyone in your audience. When you're doing your coaching, you want it to be a learning experience. So you want to make it fun also. Make it a pleasant learning experience, and think about not just the content that you're delivering, but the environment that you're delivering it in. And make it fun for the user. So adapt to more of the ideas, and it's good for reinforcing. And when you talk about reinforcement, you want to talk about support. When you do follow-up support, not only does it help the end user, it also displays your commitment to making sure that they succeed. So blending the delivery of your message by involving multiple teams and management and your users' input, it's all part of the mix here for when you're trying to get your concepts out there to the users. And then when we talk about mixing it up, this is where you can really start thinking about things. Identify your audience again, not only their roles, but their skill sets, their availability. Even it can come down to their location. You want to think about that when you're creating all of your sessions and even your curriculum. When you're doing your curriculum, think about different ways of doing it. Hands-on people still like. They also like to see the virtual. And you can also do pre-recorded videos. Another concept is doing mobile apps. And I don't know if anyone here on our team or in this presentation today is familiar with that. And Chuck will talk a little bit more about that, but Adaptive has actually delivered a new concept for having curriculum on the mobile app. One-on-one coaching is another thing that you can think about. How would you want to do that? There's different ways. You can set up appointments, and as we'll talk later on here, you can also do drive-bys where you have someone out on the floor that just stops into the office to see if there's any assistance they can give to your user. And you want to still remember always to keep the quick reference content and the documentation. There are still people like to have that for step-by-step referencing when they're doing a task. Another idea is to think about is create some champions or team cheerleaders. They'll help you get the message out there to the users. Having a set of boots on the ground, as they say, it makes sure that they're your eyes and ears so your message is delivered, and they can also help you with feedback. The success of your project is always measured by your user's experience. So you want to make sure that it is a pleasant experience for everyone. And let's talk a little bit about your lessons learned. You want to make sure, all of us have been in technology, we've all learned lessons along the way, and I'd like to just share a couple of them that I've learned in my experience. One of the first things is that you always wanted to identify all the positive strategies that have worked for you, but you also want to look at the struggles from the past, and they'll help you with your moving forward when you're planning your next session. You want to do this, and ways to do this could be, think about, can you review your user adoption from the last initiative that you did? Is it possible to get an attendance count from past sessions to see not only how many folks attended, but did your morning classes work better? Did your afternoon classes work better? Having that information will help you with your next scheduling session. And if you had any kind of coach surveys, review that feedback. See what people liked and didn't like. That is another way to help you get through this. And when you do your communicating, which would be your second concept, is you want to make sure that it's familiar and consistent and even fun. And you want to be very, very descriptive. I've seen when it comes to announcing different type of scheduling that you want to make sure that you give the users a lot of information. Define when this is happening. How long is the session going to be? What type of training is it going to be? Hands-on, video. Make sure that everyone receives the same message, the date, the time, how they sign up for it. And when you're doing this and you're delivering it, there's different things to think about also. And a couple of tips I've learned, as Chuck told you, I've been in this business a long time over the years. When you're doing a hands-on training, you really don't want to go any longer than 2 hours. You're going to lose the attention of the users. So if you can keep it under 2 hours, that's a good time frame when it's hands-on. When you're doing any type of presentation class, slow that one down and make that even less. Because when you have people in a large room, they get distracted, they're talking to the person sitting next to them. Keep that to like half the time. An hour presentation is a long time to keep someone's attention. When you have the ability to do one-on-one, I like to see to keep that from 30 to 45 minutes. Normally when you're doing one-on-one, you're going into your user's office or at their desk, and 30 to 45 minutes in a law office is a long time for someone to be focused on one thing. So keep that one down to at least no longer than 45 minutes. And if you can look at the e-learning and think about doing e-learning, not only do you want it to be engaging and have a defined message, that goes without speaking, you don't want that to be any longer than 10 or 15 minutes either. Because once you get past 10 or 15 minutes, again, they can get easily distracted. But if you break it into snippets and have a schedule or a step-by-step of the classes and the modules that they need to look at, they will get through them. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that it's easy to get to all of this content. Having it set up so that you could send links to the users is the best way to do it. The last thing you want are for people to have to go hunting to find the sign-up schedule, or have a location and they're not sure which session they need to sign up for, or they're looking for content and it's not easily identified. Have a central location and make it easy for them to access. You'll get better feedback and more adoption to your information. And then the last thing you want to look at is asking and making sure that you have support. Think about that floor support and acknowledge the user success when you're doing that. I did a project where we did what we called the drive-by. So after all of the appointments were done, there were folks that just walked around the offices and stopped and saw everybody and just introduced themselves and asked them if they had any questions. We were shocked at how much training those folks did when they were out on the floor. Because when you come out of the class and you start using the product, or you start doing this new type of task, you start to find questions when you're doing it with live content. So having that drive-by was another way to support them. And I really do feel in the years that I've been doing this, when you give them the support after the fact, they really do feel like you're committed to making sure that they succeed. And quite honestly, that's what this is all about, making sure that your end users succeed in learning and are comfortable with anything new that is delivered to them. And then ask them for the feedback. I know that sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for. You may not particularly like some of the feedback, but I also think that it can help you moving forward. So always follow up with some feedback. It'll be good for your next initiative that you do. Okay, and then lastly here is, what are your next steps? In my opinion, you want to make sure you take a look at the big picture here. Make sure that everyone is involved, from the top of management to the IT folks to the scheduling people, even your HR department. When you're doing a big deployment, you should have all teams involved with this, especially if it's a new process across the entire office. And when you define what your strategy and planning should be, you want to make sure that you start with everyone in the beginning. and not bring them in at the 11th hour. That'll help ensure that you have a successful deployment here. And ask for resources. Resources are always good. Having support, getting assistance from others. Look for content experts. That's another way to help you with this. The management buy-in, I can't stress that one enough. Some tell me that should be the very first thing that you do. But when you have management buy-in, it goes down, it's a trickle-down effect. The entire firm, if they see it coming from the top, they're going to take a second look at it. And recruit those cheerleaders and pilot groups. I really think that having a pilot group for even just your lesson plans is not a bad idea. Besides using pilot groups for any kind of technology upgrade that you might want to do, have them for the lesson plan. Get their feedback. And get the cheerleaders out there in the remote offices. Make sure that they are up to date as to what's going on so that they can be your eyes and ears when you're moving forward with everything. Keep everybody together on this, and it'll work for everyone. So the last thing here before I hand it back over to Chuck is I'm going to talk to you is about how Adaptive can help you. So I know that this is a presentation where I just gave you a lot of information to think about, but there's also some resources here at Adaptive that we can help you with. As Chuck told you, we have some trainers like myself that have been in the legal business for quite a few years. We also have some subject matter experts on just about all of the applications that we've come across in the legal field. And we have a great curriculum development team that works with our coaching teams so that we can assist if you were ever needing a curriculum development done for any kind of rollout or new upgrade to an application. Another division that we have here, Chuck touched on it earlier, is support services. We also offer a help desk service that you could use even virtually during a deployment or a rollout as another set of hands to help you during that support time. And of course, we have project managers from the high-end technology right down to leading small and large projects across all different departments and types of technology. So if there's any questions or anything that you think that we could help you with, or there's more you'd like to discuss one-on-one, Chuck's going to give you some more information on how to contact me. Feel free to reach out. And again, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope I gave you some new ideas here. And Chuck, I'm going to hand this one, toss it back to you.
Thank you, Marianne. That was some wonderful information, and I think everybody got at least something out of those slides that you went through today. Could you jump over to the next slide, please?
Sure.
I think the last one we were going to talk about that was on my list was to talk a little bit about some of the tools or the tools that we have in our portfolio that we leverage on educational and user support campaigns. And in looking at this slide, obviously in the upper left-hand corner we have traditional instructor-led design and education. This is, as Marianne said, classroom-style learning, chalk and talk style presentation, hands-on style. If that's required in your firm, we can help with those types of things. And even if it's not doing the training itself, if you're looking for a train-the-trainer program or you're just looking for some assistance in developing that curriculum, that can be an area that we can help in. Another area that we've been asked to engage in is custom documentation. You know, do you have the proper handouts to give to your people so that they have something sticky to hold on to after the classroom time is up? A simple trifold or maybe electronic documentation that's available up on the network is always a good quick reference sheet, if you will, for using document management and the office tools. Moving over to the right-hand side of this slide is a little bit more contemporary content that we're using, or tools, I should say. The first one is a product that we call Your Cloud Room that was developed in-house by Marianne and our internal development team that allows us to deliver a virtual learning environment to you in a secure and privatized fashion in our cloud, meaning that the firm does not need to make the investment in additional server hardware, software, and infrastructure, and we can deliver that room to you with content customized specific to your firm's desktop environment, or if you have your own modules that you're creating or your own information you'd like to publish, we can be the fabric that delivers that down to your user community. One of the really cool things that Marianne spoke about with our Your Cloud Room product is that we're one of the only products in the industry that allow us to deliver learning management systems to smartphones and tablet devices. A good example would be if you have an attorney who is, at an evening event with one of their children, maybe watching a soccer game and has an extra 15 minutes and wants to take the learning material on document management, they can do that on their iPhone or Android device. It's very nice. And it also includes the ability to have accountability of who's taken what tracks and how much progress they've made. And the last point I'll make is the Extend IT Help Desk, which Marianne just alluded to. It's a great way to provide supplemental support coverage or overflow during a project. There are a lot of firms where we are their help desk, but there are a lot of projects where firms need extra help while they're ramping up during that conversion, and we can provide those extra supplemental services through the help desk, either on a business hours, after hours, or 24/7 basis. Marianne, next slide, please, as we wrap up. Okay, so at this point of the presentation, we're going to pause. We're at about 30 minutes in, and we're going to see if anybody has any questions they would like to ask. Again, I would remind you that if you want to ask any questions, to please submit them through the GoToWebinar chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Marianne, I have mine open, so I'm going to monitor, and if you see anything come in, will you please do the same? And it looks like I have one here for you, Marianne. Let me see if I get this right. Someone's asking, what is the ratio of distance learning versus traditional classroom time? Maybe you can elaborate on what we've been seeing in that area.
Okay. Well, it's changed. I can tell you that over the last couple of years, we have seen, and from what little I've had time to read on and off with my content that I received, that it used to be, the majority was hands-on in a classroom or in a conference room type of thing. And if I had to guess, I would say in the last 5 years that where that might have been 90% of the training, I would say that the traditional learning is pretty much 50-50, if not a little bit less, for the simple reason that, e-learning and virtual webinars, things like that, it's taking over the classroom, and you're really not seeing, especially in your large firms, new environments or new offices, they don't have the training rooms like they used to. So I would say that, and I hope this helps someone, that the ratio was much higher a couple years ago, and it's probably split right now with, 50% being classroom, and the other 50% I would say being virtual, whether it's live virtual or recorded virtual, even, just e-learning in general. LMS are starting to get bigger too.
That's great.
Okay.
In the interest of time, I have one more that I think we could squeeze in before we wrap up. Someone's asking, which repositories are firms using to store learning materials?
Okay, that's a good one. Multiple places. You see it if a firm has an intranet, they'll put it on their internal intranet. Document management systems are used, even the cloud. And in the cloud, though, you have to watch it because a lot of times, a lot of people would look to YouTube to put information up there. But when you're in the legal environment, it's a lot of private content. You can have subscriptions to private YouTubes, but then you got to manage not only the content, but access to it. So I would think that internal intranet and document management systems are the biggest thing, but there is a move towards even private clouds, like you were just talking about with your cloud room. That's one way. There's a little sales pitch from my end on that one, Chuck.
That's great.
So,
okay, let's wrap up on the next slide. I think we have to do the giveaway and get everybody back to their jobs.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so I get to do this, right?
You get to pull the winning prize.
All right. So let me see who I pulled here. Karen, and I hope I can pronounce this last name, Anzuni. Am I pronouncing that? Anzuni. So
Excellent.
Karen,
Congratulations,
we
Karen.
will be in touch with you to send that gift card out to you.
That's a great way to start your holiday shopping, a $100 American Express gift card.
There you go.
Send one to me too, Marianne, while you're at it, please.
Okay.
All right, and the last slide I think we have to hit is just upcoming webinars. For those of you that are finding value in the webinars, we have another one coming up on December 10th. It's entitled Leveraging VDI, which is Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. A little bit of a play on words here because a desktop is a terrible thing to waste. talking a little bit about the concepts of a centralized and non-persistent stream desktop environment, how that looks in a law firm, how that behaves with your legal applications, and if that can make your workforce more empowered to be able to do their job wherever they are on whatever device they're working on. That will be the last webinar that we do in 2014. Then we're taking a break for the holiday season. Looking into 2015, you can see what we have on our dance card. We're going to be doing a webinar early in the year on our Your Docs template package. We're also going to be talking about the death of Windows Server 2003. The end is definitely coming close. We'll jump into a combination of Mimecast and Office 365. Everybody that we're talking to these days is talking about reducing their digital footprint, and these two tools work hand in hand together to deliver an Office environment with hosted email and continuity. Then we'll get a little bit deeper into Azure Site Recovery, learning management systems, and of course, as we get into the better part of the year, we're going to jump into some ECM content, specifically with worksite archiving concepts. So with that, I think the last slide, Marianne, is just our contact information for those that need to know how to reach us. And we can leave that up there as we sign off. Again, on behalf of Marianne and myself, everyone at Adaptive Solutions, we know your time is valuable. We appreciate you giving some of it to us today and joining us for our webinar. One last housekeeping item, we will be sending out a thank you email to everybody. That email will include a link to the recorded session. Perhaps there's someone within your organization that might benefit from this that wasn't able to attend, as well as a copy of the slide deck from today's presentation. So thank you very much for your time, and with that, we're going to say goodbye and sign off. Have a good day.
Thank you.